Chapter 11, It's my first time to fight with a woman. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Guangling blocked the two of them with an ice wall transformed from ice attributes, instantly blocking the fiery red light sprayed by the big snake. He looked carefully at the blocked fiery red light and found that there was actually a layer of faint red mist attached to it. This fire mist is actually poisonous. Guangling frowned. Xin Ya turned her head and looked at the fiery red light, and said, "Yes, those 10-headed blazing sun snakes are strange beasts from the ancient times. They are extremely poisonous and have the strongest fire poison among snakes." An ancient beast? Guangling lowered his eyes, looked at the little girl hugging her waist tightly, and asked, "How do you know?" Xin Ya looked up at him and said, "I saw it in the book." Guangling became more and more curious about her. He felt that this little thing knew a lot of things. But judging from her age, she shouldn't be the kind with a lot of experience, and her appearance in the killing city itself is incredible. Guangling couldn't help but ask, "Who are you?" Xin Ya pretended to be stupid and said, I'm just an ordinary person. Let's not talk about anything else. Let's deal with the big snake first. Now there is an ice wall blocking it, and the 10 blazing sun snakes keep spitting fire poison towards the ice wall, but how can the ice wall condensed by peak Douluo be so easy to break? Guangling looked at the big snake and asked Xin Ya, "Don't you have a mission? How do you want me to cooperate?" Xin Ya said, "I only know how to attack the 9 sarcomas on the snake's back and break them all to kill it." Guangling said, "That's easy. I'll send you to the back of the big snake, and you can use your sword to break its tumors one by one." "But wait a minute." Xin Ya shouted anxiously, "You won't send me on the back of a big snake and then ignore me." No, I'm so afraid of snakes." She still hugged Guangling tightly and refused to let go. "It's worthless." Guangling looked at her scared look and complained again. The little girl lowered her head, bit her lip and said, "If you have no future, you have no future. Anyway, I don't want to be alone on the back of a snake. It's so scary." Seeing her scared look, Guangling felt inexplicably soft-hearted. He compromised and said, "Forget it, I'll just hit him later and let the snake breathe for the last time and let you deal with it. Is that okay?" Xin Ya thought about it, and the assessment content only said that she had to kill 10 blazing sun snakes, and it didn't say that she had to fight from beginning to end by herself, so she had to take advantage of the textual loopholes. She nodded and smiled, "It should be okay. It's so long-winded." Guangling said in disgust. "Hold me tight later. I can't take care of you during the beating. If you fall into the blood pool lava below, I won't save you." Xin Ya nodded. Originally she was hugging him sideways, but now after being warned by Guangling, she hugged Guangling face to face, the hands tightly wrapped around his neck, her legs clamped around his waist, and her little head rested directly on the crook of his neck. Guangling instantly felt the softness of the tight place. His body trembled slightly, and he rolled his throat and said, "Hey. Little one, you don't have to hold me so tightly." Xin Ya shook her head and said, "When you fight later, you will definitely get close to the big snake." I'm afraid." Because she was afraid, she was also afraid of falling, and she was even more afraid of the big snake, so now it didn't matter to her whether men and women were kissing each other or not. Fear and life are more important. Since the two of them were leaning against each other, when the little girl shook her head just now, her cheek kept rubbing against Guangling's neck. The smooth and tender touch made him feel itchy. And she was still snorting in his ear while she was talking. Guangling cursed in his heart, "Damn it, is this little thing testing his concentration?" He told himself in his heart not to be affected by her for the time being. After gathering his thoughts, a blue-white long sword with ice and light attributes appeared in Guangling's hand. He held a long sword and rushed towards the 10 blazing sun snakes. This was his first time fighting with a woman in his arms, but Guangling felt that it felt pretty good. Although fire can defeat ice, after all, Guangling has an ice attribute at the peak Douluo level, so the fire of the 10-headed blazing sun snake cannot completely restrain him. Moreover, Guangling not only has the attribute of ice, but also has the attribute of light, so the Douluo expert level also combines the two attributes of ice and light. Soon, the 10-headed fierce sun snake was completely at a disadvantage. being suppressed and beaten by Guangling. While Guangling was beating the snake, he said, "You will be unlucky if you meet me." Finally, the blue-white long sword that combined the attributes of light and ice pierced the lower jaw of the 10-headed blazing sun snake. The 10-headed sun snakes crashed onto the narrow road, their huge snake bodies twisting wildly in pain. The long sword in his hand disappeared, and Guangling held Xin Ya and flew down to the narrow road. The man patted the little girl's back gently and said, "Okay. Don't be afraid. The big snake can't move anymore. Go and deal with it quickly." Xin Ya raised her little head and turned to look at the big snake behind her. The 10-headed blazing sun snakes were already lying flat on the narrow road, hanging with only their last breath left. The little girl let go of Guangling with her hands and feet, jumped to the ground, turned around and called out the divine sword, and walked towards the big snake a little timidly. After walking a few steps, he looked back at Guangling and asked, Can it still move?" "It's still breathing, don't you think?" Guangling crossed her arms across her chest and was looking at the little girl's scared look with interest. "This little thing is so fun." Xin Ya turned her head again, holding the divine sword tightly, and slowly moved towards the big snake. When she moved to the big snake's head, she immediately closed her eyes. "Oh my God, why is this snake's head so big? It scares the baby to death." When she was on Aquamarine Star, she was scared to death when she saw the head of a small snake, let alone such a big snake head now. Xin Ya felt that she dared to get close because her ancestors had given her the courage. Just when she was very scared, Guangling walked up behind her in a particularly bad way, leaned close to her ear and suddenly said, "Are you waiting for it to come back to life before you attack?" "Ah." Xin Ya, who was closing her eyes, was startled by the sudden sound in her ears. Shen Jian was so frightened that she let go. She turned around suddenly and threw herself into Guangling's arms, hugging the man's waist tightly again. Guangling said disdainfully, "Are you that scared? You really have no future at all." The little girl raised her wet eyes and looked at him. Her voice was slightly choked and she said, "I have been really afraid of snakes since I was a child. Please don't scare me like this." Guangling looked at her pitiful look on the verge of crying, feeling a little irritated and a little distressed for no reason. He pursed his lips, and subconsciously reached out to the corners of her eyes with his long fingers to wipe them, and said, Okay, it was my fault for scaring you just now." After finishing speaking, Guangling pulled out her hand from holding him, then took her wrist and walked to the divine sword. He knelt down, picked up the divine sword, put it in her hand and said, "I'm here to accompany you. Go over and pierce the 9 tumors on the back of the snake to get rid of it." Xin Ya sniffed and nodded. She took the divine sword and walked towards the big snake again. This time she didn't know if it was because Guangling was around to embolden her, she felt that she was not so scared anymore. Chapter 12. You are the police of the Pacific Ocean, you have so much to do. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Xin Ya took the divine sword and walked to the 9 sarcoma of the 10-headed blazing sun snake. When she was about to take action, the big snake moved due to spasm. The little girl was instantly frightened. Guangling quickly came behind her, bent down and put his hands around her body. His big hand held her small hand and said in her ear, "Don't be afraid, I'm here." The little girl was surrounded by the man's arms, and when his hand held her hand, it felt as if electricity flowed through her. Moreover, Xin Ya actually felt a sense of security in her heart. She couldn't understand that she actually felt a sense of security from this arrogant and strange person. She was like a ghost. Guangling held Xin Ya's hand, and used her big hand to drive her small hand to stab the first sarcoma on the big snake's back. Then she swung the divine sword back and destroyed the other 8 sarcomas at the same time. The 10-headed blazing sun snake instantly trembled throughout its body, roared, and finally the huge snake head fell down dead silently without any reaction. At this time, the 9 sarcomas on the snake's back suddenly shot out golden-red liquid, and then the liquid gradually condensed into a small golden-red ball. Xin Ya made a move with her right hand, and the golden-red ball was pulled by the soul power and slowly flew into her palm. Guangling asked, "What is this?" Xin Ya explained, "This is the inner elixir of the 10-headed blazing sun snake. This inner elixir can make all snakes change. It is the supreme among snakes." Guangling looked sideways at her. You also saw it in the book. Xin Ya nodded. At this moment, everything around him stopped instantly, and even Guangling, a peak Douluo, couldn't notice it. At this time, Xin Ya's consciousness entered another space, and the voice of God Shura suddenly sounded. Little girl, your second assessment is a bit opportunistic. Xin Ya chuckled and said, then you didn't say that no one can help, right? And you see, I'm only a 25 level scumbag, and I don't even have a soul ring. If someone hadn't helped me, let alone killing the big bat and snake, the scorching heat of hell road alone would have killed me. So just put down the water for me a little bit, okay? God Shura sighed and said, okay, I can just turn a blind eye and count you as passing the second divine test. But after all, you have someone assisting you in the assessment, so I have to have the reward. Originally, after the second assessment is completed, you can be rewarded with a 2-level increase in soul power level and a 100,000-year-old left leg soul bone. But now I can only reward you with a 1-level increase in your soul power level, but there will be no soul bones. Xin Ya wailed, Lord Shura God, why don't you reward me with a life worth 10,000 years? No, God Shura said, if you are so opportunistic, I can still let you pass the second test and increase your soul power by 1 level. This is already the greatest tolerance for you. If you ask again, I will consider you to have failed the test. If you fail the divine test, you should know what the consequences will be. Of course Xin Ya knows that if you fail every test in the divine examination, you will be doomed. She immediately gave up and said, it doesn't matter if I don't need soul bones or anything, you just need to pass the test for me. Then what is my next test? God Shura said, the third test is to raise the soul power level to level 40 and obtain 2 10,000-year soul rings. Xin Ya frowned and said, I'm only level 25, can I absorb a 10,000-year soul ring? Sure. God Shura said, don't forget that your martial soul is the Shura divine sword. Not to mention a 10,000-year soul ring, you can absorb it even if it lasts 100,000 years. But the higher the level of the soul ring you absorb, the greater the pain you have to endure during the absorption process. Shura divine sword can guarantee that you can succeed no matter what level of soul ring you absorb, but you have to bear the process yourself. This is your test. As your soul power level increases later, the assessment content requires you to absorb higher levels of soul rings, so be mentally prepared. Xin Ya took a deep breath. Well, I don't have a choice anyway, so let's let the storm come more violently. God Shura looked at Xin Ya. Suddenly I felt that this little girl was quite resilient and positive. Instead of escaping from difficulties, she faced them head-on. This actually gave God Shura a hint of appreciation for Xin Ya. After Xin Ya cheered herself up, she suddenly remembered the inner elixir of the 10-headed blazing sun snake. The inner elixir that the 10 blazing sun snakes have cultivated for thousands of years contains tens of thousands of years of cultivation. Isn't the third test of the divine examination about absorbing the 10,000-year soul ring? Then isn't this inner elixir a ready-made soul ring with 10,000 years of cultivation? And according to the original plot, Tang San gave the inner elixir to Ma Hongjun and absorbed it as the 7th soul ring. Then his martial soul was the Shura divine sword, so it was definitely okay, but I don't know if the attributes can match. Xin Ya immediately asked God Shura, Master Shura God, can I absorb the inner elixir of the 10-headed blazing sun snake as a soul ring? A rare smile finally appeared on God Shura's expressionless face, and he praised, very good. You finally asked. I was afraid you wouldn't think of the inner elixir. When Xin Ya heard what Shura God said, she smiled and said, so the inner elixir is suitable, right? God Shura said, you don't need to worry about attributes, because Shura divine sword only cares about whether the level of the soul ring is appropriate. As for attributes, divine sword itself can automatically integrate all attributes and turn it into the most suitable soul skill. When it comes to absorbing the soul ring, it's all up to you. No one can help you anymore. My successor, bear it well. After he finished speaking, he disappeared instantly. With the disappearance of Shura God, Xin Ya's consciousness flickered, and she instantly left that space and returned to her body. On the road to hell, Guangling saw Xin Ya staring at the inner pill in her hand, and he asked, "What are you thinking about?" Xin Ya said, "The book says that this inner pill was cultivated by 10-headed scorching sun snakes for 10,000 years, so it is equivalent to a 10,000-year soul ring. It just so happens that I am now level 25 and need to obtain 2 soul rings. This inner pill is suitable for one of them," Guangling said incredulously. "You want to absorb this inner pill as a soul ring?" Xin Ya nodded. Guangling immediately said, "You said that this inner elixir was formed by 10,000 years of cultivation. I believe this, but you are a young soul master with a soul power level of only 25. Are you crazy to absorb the first soul ring of 10,000 years? 10,000 years of cultivation is not a joke. If your body can't bear it, you will explode and die." Xin Ya raised her eyes, looked at Guangling, and said firmly, "Believe me, I can absorb the soul ring of 10,000 years." "No." Guangling shook his head. "I won't let you take such a big risk to absorb the soul ring of 10,000 years of cultivation." That at this time, Xin Ya suddenly realized that what kind of soul ring she absorbed was none of this arrogant monster's business. Thinking like this, she just said it like this. "What kind of soul ring I absorbed was none of your business. You are the police of the Pacific Ocean, so nosy." Guangling frowned. "What is the Pacific Ocean? What is the police?" Pursing her lips, the little girl reorganized her words, then she put her hands on her hips, glared at him and said, "Who are you to me? What kind of spirit ring I absorb is none of your business." Chapter 13. How many secrets do you have? You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Hearing what Xin Ya said, Guangling's face instantly darkened. "Yes, it's really none of my business, I'm just being nosy. You can absorb it however you want, I won't help you collect your body if you die." After saying that, he turned around and sat on the ground next to him, crossed his legs and closed his eyes, and the distance he sat was just within 1 meter of Xin Ya. After closing his eyes, Guangling cursed himself in his heart. "I must be a slut, I was bullied by this dead thing like this, and I actually sat within 1 meter of her. I should move a little, outside her 1 meter range, let her be roasted." But he didn't know why, he just didn't dare to move 1 meter away, for fear that the little thing would really be heated to death by the blood pool magma. Xin Ya heard what he said just now, and suddenly felt that she seemed to have gone a little too far. After all, that arrogant monster was worried about her and stopped her like that. The little girl looked at him a few times, remembering what he had done to help her before. Finally, she sighed, walked to him and sat down, and asked weakly, "Are you angry?" Guangling still closed his eyes and didn't speak. Xin Ya said softly, Okay, I know you are worried about me. I shouldn't have said that to you just now. I was wrong. Didn't you pinch my face before? My cheeks are still a little painful now, so let's call it a tie, okay?" Hearing this, Guangling slowly opened his eyes and looked at her cheeks. The pinch marks of his big hands were still on her cheeks, somewhat guilty. He said lightly, "You want a soul ring. After you go out, I will help you hunt 100-year or 1,000-year soul ring. It's up to you. But you still don't absorb this inner pill. You can put it away first. It's not too late to absorb it when you are level 50 and can withstand a 10,000-year soul ring." Xin Ya looked into his eyes and saw the worry in his eyes. Thinking for a moment, she decided that it would be better to say something to reassure him before absorbing the inner pill. "When we opened the Hell Road, didn't you hear the King of Slaughter say that I was a god patroller chosen by God?" Guangling raised his eyebrows and raised his chin, motioning her to continue. Xin Ya continued, "I am indeed a god patroller chosen by God. The reason why I appeared in the Slaughter City is because I need to complete tasks to become a patroller. Participating in 100 Hell Slaughter fields and winning is my task, killing the Bat King and the Big Snake is also a task, and now absorbing this inner pill to obtain a 10,000-year soul ring is also a task." The little girl thought to herself, "I didn't completely lie to him, after all, those are indeed the assessment tasks I have to complete, but I am not a god patroller, but the successor of the Shura god." After hearing her words, Guangling narrowed his eyes slightly and asked, "How did you convince the King of Slaughter that you are a god patrol hunter?" Xin Ya said, "Remember when I fought that big bat, when its sound wave physical attack came towards me, a layer of red protective barrier appeared on my body. That is the power of the God Patrol Hunter. The day I met you in the corridor, I suddenly appeared in the room of the King of Slaughter. The King of Slaughter attacked me, and the protective barrier of the Patrol Hunter appeared on my body. The King of Slaughter saw it, and he recognized that power, so he believed it. Guangling understood, and he did see the red protective barrier himself. That also reasonably explains why a little girl like her appeared in the killing city. Guangling asked again, "Are you sure you can really absorb the 10,000-year soul ring?" Xin Ya smiled and said, "Don't worry, the process will definitely be painful. After all, my soul power level is low, but it will never endanger my life." Guangling finally had a smile on his face and said, "Okay, then you absorb it now, I'll guard you." The little girl nodded. She took out the inner elixir from the system space again, swallowed her saliva nervously, and then put the inner elixir of the 10-headed scorching sun snake into her mouth and swallowed it whole. Then, she immediately closed her eyes and began to drive the soul power in her body to dissolve the inner elixir of the 10-headed scorching sun snake. Guangling stared at the little girl nervously. After a while, Xin Ya's skin began to change from the original white to light red. The delicate and fair little face began to show a strong pain, and even her sitting figure became unstable. Cold sweat began to ooze out from her forehead. Guangling clenched his fists. He had never been so nervous. At this time, the small mark of the Shura sword on Xin Ya's forehead suddenly lit up. At the same time, the Shura sword appeared from behind her, but the sword was no longer the ordinary appearance before, but turned back to the original 2-meter-long blood-red giant sword. Guangling looked at the dark gold magic pattern on the giant sword, and he could feel the extremely sharp killing aura emanating from the giant sword. He was immediately shocked by the appearance of the bloody giant sword. Although Guangling did not recognize it as the Shura sword, he knew that this sword was definitely not an ordinary long sword. It seems that this is the original appearance of the sword. The little thing had hidden the true appearance of the sword before. The man's ice-blue eyes looked deeply at the little girl in front of him. He took out a handkerchief from the storage soul guide and reached out to help Xin Ya wipe the sweat on her forehead. "Little thing, how many secrets do you have?" At this time, Xin Ya's consciousness entered another cold space. The space was filled with a strong smell of blood. The cold feeling and the strong smell of blood made the little girl shudder. Suddenly, countless painful voices began to appear in Xin Ya's ears, roaring and shouting in a desolate way. At this moment, something flashed through the little girl's mind. When she opened her eyes in that space, the surroundings were instantly red, and the domineering flames of the 10-headed fiery sun snake were completely suppressed by the Shura sword. At this time, the mechanical voice of the system appeared in Xin Ya's mind. Hint: the host automatically comprehends the fire of purification that eliminates sins because of the mystery of the judgment and punishment of the Shura sword. Hint: the comprehension is against the sky. Congratulations to the host for raising the soul power level by 1 level. The current soul power level is level 27. Hint: the host automatically comprehends the ability to be immune to poison because of the mystery of the inner alchemy fire poison of the 10-headed fiery sun snake. Hint: the comprehension is amazing. Congratulations to the host for raising his soul power level by 1 more level. With the 5 levels of soul ring level increase, the current soul power level is 33. The mechanical sound of the system disappeared, and Xin Ya's consciousness returned to the body. She slowly opened her eyes and stood up. A black 10,000-year soul ring rose from under her feet. The blood-colored giant sword flew in front of her, her silver-white hair fluttered, and her eyes turned red. First soul skill, sword rises, the fire barrier of the world. At the moment Xin Ya finished speaking, the giant sword turned into a red and blue light curtain, covering her and Guangling, forming a defensive barrier. Guangling looked at the defensive barrier and praised, "This defensive skill is not bad." Xin Ya also thought it was good, and smiled and nodded in agreement. Chapter 14 Call me brother and let me hear it. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After Guangling praised her first soul skill, he looked at Xin Ya and reached out to touch the long silver-white hair hanging on her shoulders. The fine and smooth touch made him a little reluctant to let go. Guangling asked, "When your martial spirit appears, will your hair color turn silver-white?" Xin Ya looked sideways and nodded, yes, affected by the martial spirit, doesn't it look good? The man smiled, it looks good, like me. The little girl pushed him away and said, who looks like you, shameless. As soon as she finished speaking, she put away her martial spirit and the defense barrier disappeared. Guangling's mouth curled slightly, since you have absorbed the soul ring, let's leave here quickly. As soon as he finished speaking, he stepped forward and hugged Xin Ya's slender waist, stretched out his ice wings behind him, and took the little girl to fly quickly along the narrow road ahead. After flying for half an hour, the two finally saw an elliptical light curtain formed by white light in front of them. Xin Ya said excitedly, that's the exit. That when the exit appeared, the two saw a blood-red ocean appearing a kilometer ahead of the exit. Before, they flew low along the narrow road. And at least there was a road below, but now there was a bloody pool of magma with a bottomless abyss. Guangling suddenly stopped. Xin Ya turned her head to look at the surging magma below. She swallowed her saliva in fear, and then decisively began to hold Guangling tightly with her hands and feet. Like a koala, she hung on the man. The little head was buried in Guangling's neck, and she didn't dare to look at the bottomless abyss. The corners of Guangling's mouth rose slightly, knowing that she must be scared, so he unconsciously held her tightly with both hands to give her a sense of security. He softened his voice inexplicably and said, don't be afraid, I won't let you fall. Xin Ya nodded and hummed softly. Guangling's ice wings flashed, flew up quickly, and flew quickly towards the light curtain exit. When flying over the blood pool magma in the abyss, Xin Ya was so nervous that she wrapped her hands and feet tightly around Guangling. The man couldn't help but say, little thing, don't wrap it so tightly, I can't stand it. I'm sorry. The little girl's voice sounded in his neck, and then she relaxed her hands and feet a little. A few minutes later, with a whoosh, Guangling finally rushed into the white light curtain with Xin Ya. At the moment when the two entered the light curtain, Xin Ya felt that everything around her changed instantly. Then, she felt that her body entered a special space. That space was cold and pale, and she felt countless chills released in her body. It was the chill brought by murderous aura, the purest killing aura. The chill made her whole body tremble, and Xin Ya felt that her heart gradually began to stiffen. Is this the killing god's domain? Consciousness gradually blurred. I don't know how long it has been. Xin Ya seemed to have had a nightmare. Suddenly, someone shouted in her ear, Xiaoya. Xiaoya, wake up. The little girl slowly opened her eyes and saw a handsome face that could be either a man or a woman. She thought she was dreaming, so she reached out and began to pinch Guangling's face. Oh, since it's a dream, I'm not afraid of you, Atsundra, in the dream. I'm going to bully you. At this time, Guangling was staring at a bold little thing with an unhappy face. Dare to pinch his face. The man yelled at her, Xin Ya, are you looking for death? Huh? After being yelled at like this, the little girl's thoughts instantly returned, and her originally confused eyes suddenly focused at this moment. When she saw clearly that she was not dreaming, she immediately retracted her little hand, sat up and took a few steps back. Quickly get away from a man with a gloomy face at this time. Guangling stood up, looked down at her, and said, why don't you get up quickly? Do you want me to go over and pull you? Xin Ya jumped up immediately and whispered, a fierce and arrogant monster. Guangling narrowed his eyes dangerously, stared at her and said, so you gave me a nickname, called the arrogant monster, right? Xin Ya stepped back decisively, pretending to be brave and said, you are arrogant, don't you know it? If not, if I don't call you an arrogant monster, what should I call you? Guangling snorted, I helped you so much on the road to hell, it's fine if you don't thank me, but you also gave me a nickname. You have no conscience. The little girl thought about it, and indeed he helped her a lot, so why not thank him? She looked at Guangling and said, what you said makes sense. You did help me a lot on the road to hell. Thank you. Just thanking is enough. Guangling raised his eyebrows and looked at her. Xin Ya asked, what else do you want? The man raised his eyebrows and said, change the nickname you call me. Huh? Xin Ya was at a loss, change it to what? Guangling bowed and looked at the little girl, smiled slightly, change it to brother, come, call me and listen. I. Fuck your sister. Xin Ya didn't curse out, she pushed Guangling away, I won't call you. Guangling tempted, don't you want to go to the spirit hall with me? Call me brother. and I'll take you there. Xin Ya said, then I'll go by myself, you don't need to take me. Guangling said indifferently, okay, but I will tell the guards guarding the city not to let anyone named Xin Ya in without my order. Even if I let you sneak into the city, you can't enter the spirit hall, I guarantee it. You. The little girl bit her lip and glared at the man in front of her angrily. Guangling looked at her and said, I have plenty of time, waiting to hear your call. When you call, we will set off to the spirit city. Or you can leave, but if you leave, you will never be able to enter the spirit city. And I promise that no matter where you go, the spirit hall will oppose you everywhere. Xin Ya roared in her heart, damn, this arrogant monster actually threatened her. Threatening her for the alias of a brother. How can this man be so hateful? But in the end, she could only compromise, because this guy is the fifth elder of the spirit hall, he has great power and cannot be offended. And let alone the two empires, even the entire continent has the power of their spirit hall. If she offends Guangling now, it will be difficult for her to enjoy the good life in Douluo Continent in the future. Xin Ya turned her head away and called out unwillingly, Guangling. Brother. Brother. Guangling glared at her, called together. Xin Ya called out softly, Brother Guangling. Too soft, I can't hear it. The man said again. The little girl took a deep breath and said loudly, Brother Guangling, are you satisfied? Guangling's mouth curled up instantly, remember, call me like this in the future. After he finished speaking, he turned around and walked forward while saying, let's go to the nearby town to eat something, and then rent a carriage to Wuhuan City. Xin Ya looked at the man's back, looking unhappy, she was forced to call, how could she feel comfortable? Hurry up, don't dawdle, you want me to catch you, right? The voice of Guangling, who was walking in front, came over, the little girl could only follow reluctantly, the two walked towards the nearest town. Chapter 15 A Man as Cunning as a Fox. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Xin Ya and Guangling walked for half an hour and finally saw a small town not far ahead. This is a large town and very prosperous, probably because it is close to Tiando City. After the two entered the town, at this time, the little girl was a little hungry. She saw the steamed buns shop on the street and stared at the steaming meat buns. Xin Ya swallowed her saliva, then touched herself, and found that she didn't have a penny. She wailed in her heart, I said that I would eat delicious food and be salted fish after I came out, but now I can't even afford a bun, let alone a salted fish. She stood in front of the bun shop, biting her lip, but she just didn't want to leave. Guangling, who was walking in front, suddenly heard no movement behind him. He stopped and turned around to see the little girl standing in front of the bun shop not far away, smacking her lips. He couldn't help laughing, how cute is this little thing? The man walked up behind her, leaned over to her ear, and asked, do you want to eat? Xin Ya was so hungry that she was attracted by the buns. She didn't notice that it was Guangling who asked the question. She nodded in a daze. Guangling bewitched, if you want to eat, call me Brother Guangling. Brother Guangling. As soon as the voice fell, the little girl realized that she was being seduced by someone. She turned around angrily, clenched her fist and was about to hit the man. Guangling smiled and grabbed her little hand, pulled her away without hesitation, and said as he walked, come on, brother will take you to a big meal. Xin Ya was forced to follow, and she struggled and shouted, I didn't call you brother, you seduced me. This stinky tsundere monster actually took advantage of her unpreparedness and induced her to call brother when she was so hungry that her consciousness was scattered. It's so shameless. When Guangling heard her call brother, he felt inexplicably happy. At this time, he didn't care about her struggles and shouting. Anyway, she couldn't resist with her strength. One was pulled hard, and the other was dragged. The two of them came to the largest restaurant in the town. Guangling never liked to have strangers waiting by his side when he ate, so he asked for a small private room. When the waiter saw that this gentleman had an extraordinary temperament and was well dressed, he guessed that he must be the eldest son of that big family. He immediately handed over the menu and asked in a very kind manner, what do you two want to eat? Guangling leaned back in the chair, put his hands behind his head, and said in a lazy manner, give her the menu. The waiter immediately understood and handed the menu to the little girl next to him. after Xin Ya was pulled into the private room by Guangling, she didn't want to sit down, but she was so hungry that she had already protested, okay. At least fill your stomach first, so that you have the energy to continue to be angry. She thought, since this arrogant monster paid, then have a good meal. Xin Ya didn't take the menu, and said to the waiter in a domineering manner, "What is the most expensive dish in your restaurant? Serve them all to me." That the waiter's eyes lit up instantly, and he immediately responded, "Okay, please wait for a moment, my two guests, I will go to place the order right away." After that, he turned around and walked quickly towards his boss at the front desk. As he walked, he was still happy in his heart. Looking at the clothes, he was indeed a rich man. After the waiter left, Guangling raised his eyebrows and looked at Xin Ya, thinking, this little thing, she doesn't need her to pay soul coins, she is very domineering. Xin Ya felt the man's gaze on her, she turned her head to look at Guangling, and deliberately said, "Why does brother Guangling look at me like this? Do you think the dishes I ordered are expensive?" This little thing was reluctant to call brother before, but now when he deliberately choked people, he called enthusiastically. Guangling looked at her and smiled, "It's okay, just order whatever you want to eat." Xin Ya said proudly, "Brother Guangling is so nice," that the man smiled, closed his eyes and ignored her. After a while, the most expensive dishes in the restaurant were served, a full table of 20 dishes. The little girl was really hungry. Seeing so many delicious dishes, she immediately got hungry and immediately drove away the angry god in her mind, picked up the chopsticks and finished it. Guangling sat next to her, he still closed his eyes, put his hands behind his head, and did not move his chopsticks, but when he heard the sound of a hungry little glutton eating like a whirlwind, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. An hour later, Xin Ya was finally full, she touched her round belly, and leaned back on the chair. Very contentedly, Guangling opened his eyes, glanced at her, and asked, "Are you full?" That the little girl smiled and nodded. Guangling said again, "Then pay and go." Xin Ya nodded and immediately shouted to the door of the private room, "Waiter." Because the amount of the meal ordered in their private room was large, the boss was afraid that someone would pretend to be rich but actually eat a free meal, so he asked the employees to wait at the door of the private room. It meant to serve the VIP well, and also to keep an eye on the guests in case they ran away. At this time, the waiter at the door heard the call from the private room, and immediately ran in flatteringly, grinning, "I'm here, please ask the guest to pay the bill." Xin Ya asked, "How many soul coins?" That the waiter immediately took out the bill and handed it to the girl. Xin Ya took the bill and checked the dishes on it. The dishes were all correct, and then she looked at the total amount at the bottom, which was written as 1 gold soul coin. How many Mao Zedongs are equivalent to 1 gold soul coin in this Douluo Continent on Shuilon Star? The little girl began to count soul coins and Mao Zedong's money in her mind while counting her fingers. As soon as she finished the calculation, she was stunned. "Oh my God, 1 gold soul coin is equivalent to 10,000 Mao Zedong's money." Xin Ya roared in her heart, 20 dishes for 10,000 yuan. What the hell did I just eat? Gold. At this moment, the lines of a skit when Shui Lanqing was a child during the Chinese New Year appeared in her mind. Palace Jade Liquor, 180 yuan per cup, how about this wine? Let me brag to you. At this moment, Guangling, who was sitting next to her, saw her counting her fingers, shocked, and shaking her head. He couldn't help asking, "Is the menu wrong?" Hearing Guangling's voice, Xin Ya came back to her senses, but she didn't dare to look at Guangling. Because she originally wanted to cheat this arrogant monster, but when she converted soul coins into Mao Zedong's money, she felt that she seemed to have cheated a little too much. So she felt a little guilty at this moment, lowered her head, silently handed him the menu in her hand, and said, "The dishes are correct, you pay." Just as she finished speaking, Guangling said, "Who said I treated you?" Xin Ya raised her head suddenly, looking at Guangling who was smiling at her in front of her with a confused face. Seeing that he supported his head with his hands, leaned close to her little face and said, "I just said I would take you to a big meal, did I say treat you? And you ordered the dishes yourself, and you ate them yourself, did I order the dishes and pick up the chopsticks?" Xin Ya. Every time the man said a word, the little girl trembled in her heart. because from beginning to end, Guangling did not say anything to treat her. How hateful. This arrogant monster actually set a trap for her. Xin Ya remembered that she had just eaten 10,000 yuan of Mao Zedong's money, and she couldn't pay it back even if she sold her to the restaurant and worked for 10 years. The little girl looked at the fox-like man who seemed to be smiling at her at this moment, and she roared in her heart, is it the decline of morality or the distortion of human nature? Chapter 16 You set a trap for me and bully me, I will bite you to death. You are listening at NaVoFull.audio. At this time, the waiter who had been standing nearby waiting for the checkout frowned and asked, 2 guests, who is paying? Xin Ya looked at Guangling who was looking at her. Guangling also looked at her and raised her chin towards the payment slip. Pay. I. She bit her lower lip, lowered her head, and temporarily compromised. Brother Guangling, I don't have a copper soul coin on me, can you help me pay? Guangling's lips curved slightly and she said, of course. But I have conditions. What conditions? Xin Ya immediately raised her eyes and looked at Guangling. The man smiled and said, you write a contract of sale and I will help you pay immediately. Deed of sale. The little girl's eyes widened instantly, don't even think about it. I can't write it. Guangling said indifferently, it's up to you. Xin Ya thought for a while, then turned to ask the waiting waiter, how many soul coins do you get from being a waiter here for a month? The waiter didn't know what the little girl wanted to do, but he still said truthfully to the customer's request, I have 5 copper soul coins a month. What? 5 copper soul coins? Xin Ya asked this because she planned to work in a restaurant to pay for the meal, but when the waiter told her the wages, she collapsed instantly. Because according to the conversion here in Douluo Continent, 1 gold soul coin is equal to 10 silver soul coins, and 1 silver soul coin is equal to 100 copper soul coins, the waiter's salary is only 5 copper soul coins a month. Oh my gosh! If she works here to pay back the gold soul coin for food, she will die. Guangling heard her asking about the waiter's salary, so he guessed that the little girl wanted to work as a waiter here to repay the meal money of the gold soul coin. He waved to the waiter and motioned for him to go out first. The waiter smiled and asked, what about this one? Guangling took out a bag of gold soul coins from the storage ring, slapped it on the dining table, and said impatiently, are you afraid that I can't afford it? Get out. Yes, the 2 guests will chat slowly. The waiter didn't pay much attention to the bag of gold soul coins, but Guangling's aura frightened him, and he immediately turned around and left the private room. After the waiter leaves, Guangling looked at Xin Ya, raised her eyebrows and said, do you want to stay here and work in the restaurant to pay for your meals? The little girl turned her face away, it's none of your business. The man smiled, if you choose to work here, I will buy this restaurant. The waiter just now said that 1 month's wages are 5 copper soul coins. If you owe 1 gold soul coin, you will work for me for the rest of your life. You. After hearing Guangling's words, Xin Ya immediately turned back and stared at him with wide eyes. The little girl was so angry that she was speechless for a moment. Guangling leaned back in his chair, put his hands on the back of his head, and said with a lazy look, do you want to sign a personal sale deed and follow me back to Wuhan City, or do I buy this place and you work here to pay back the money? You choose. Xin Ya bit her lip and asked, I am a little soul master, how can I help you? Why do you have to sign a contract of sale with me? Guangling smiled and said, I am short of a maid in the 5 worship hall, and you are just the right one. I don't want it, the little girl said angrily, I won't be your little maid, the man said indifferently, then you can work as a waiter here, but let me tell you, you will get much better treatment as my little maid than as a waiter. Xin Ya bit her lip, glared at the cunning man, and accused, it was obviously you who set me up, but you still have the nerve to force me to do this. She wanted to use the word prostitute, but after thinking about it, it was wrong. What a prostitute, crazy. The little girl immediately changed her words and said, you are forcing good people to be servants. Forcing good people to be servants? What? Guangling ignored her accusation and admitted directly, yes, I set a trap for you. Who told you to be careless and get into the trap on your own initiative? The little girl roared in her heart, why is this man so excessive? So angry? Guangling urged, maid or waiter, hurry up and choose, I don't have the patience. Xin Ya took a deep breath and resisted the urge to strangle this tsundere again. Finally, she was forced by someone's power and reluctantly said again, I choose to be a maid. Guangling felt happy for a moment. She immediately sat up straight, took out the paper and pen from the storage soul guide, handed it to the little girl, and said, write the deed of sale yourself and sign it. Xin Ya took the pen and paper and wrote her own contract of betrayal while getting angry. After she finished writing, she signed her name at the signature area, and when she was about to stamp it, she found that there was no ink pad like the aqua blue star. The little girl looked at her thumb. Should she bite it off and draw it with blood? Oh my God, no. It hurts so much. At this time, she looked at Guangling, then without hesitation she pulled the man's finger over and bit it hard with her little teeth. Xin Ya bit her while cursing in her mind, if you trick me and bully me, I will bite you to death. Hiss. Guangling suddenly looked at Xin Ya. He didn't expect that this little thing would grab his finger and bite it. The man wanted to snatch his thumb back, but it was too late, blood was already coming out. Xin Ya quickly pressed her little finger to his thumb, soaked it with a little blood, and then pressed it to her name where the deed of sale was signed. Then, she handed him the deed of betrayal with a proud look on her face. Guangling lowered his eyes and looked at his thumb. There was a small tooth mark on it, but the bleeding was not much. At this time, a contract of prostitution was handed to him, and the man raised his eyes to look at the little girl who was temporarily proud of biting him. He smiled inwardly, forget it, it's just a little blood and a little pain, don't care about her. Guangling took the deed of betrayal, looked at it, then folded the paper with satisfaction and placed it in the storage soul guide. He took away the bag of soul coins that he had just taken out from the dinner table, then stood up and said, let's go out and pay the bill. After saying this, he walked out of the private room with his long legs. Xin Ya stood up and followed him. When paying the bill, the restaurant owner was extremely complimentary to this wealthy man. He nodded and bowed, and sent Guangling and Xin Ya to the door of the restaurant. Before leaving, Xin Ya glanced at the restaurant owner and whispered, flattery. Guangling heard what the little girl said and said, follow me obediently, and there will be people who flatter you like this. Xin Ya turned her head and ignored him and walked forward quickly. She even showed her face to the master, this little maid is so bold. The man looked at the little girl's back and smiled. Afterwards, the two went to the car rental shop, rented a carriage, and set off for Wuhan City. Carriage. Xin Ya sat quietly by the window and looked at the scenery. At this time, she looked very good. The sun shines on the little girl's face, and her white and tender skin is as crystal clear as a peeled egg. Guangling sat in the middle seat and couldn't help but keep looking sideways at her. Those big watery eyes, that delicate little nose, and that little cherry mouth. Guangling remembered that when she smiled, there were small pear dimples on both sides of her cheeks, which was very cute. I don't know when the beauty of the little girl began to shine in the man's heart, he thought. Maybe it started to slowly seep into his heart when he watched every life and death fight of hers in the killing city. Because I am about to start PK, I have to control the word count. I can only add one chapter in the next 3 days. Sorry, babies. Chapter 17 Wolf Bandits Attack. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. In the carriage heading to Wuhan City, Xin Ya, who had been looking at the scenery outside the window, felt the gaze of the man next to her. She ignored him and moved her position towards the window. Guangling knew that this little guy had been angry with him since he came out of the restaurant, because no matter what he asked, she didn't say anything. Guangling looked at the little girl, and then took out a package of things from the storage soul guide. At this time, Xin Ya, who was sitting by the car window, suddenly smelled a very fragrant smell. Her nose twitched, it smells so good. Isn't this the smell of the braised meat shop I saw when I just left the restaurant in the town? At that time, Xin Ya stood in front of the braised meat shop and looked at it for a long time, because the aroma of the braised food was exactly the same as that of the braised food she always loved when she was at Water Blue Star. She misses that taste so much. Xin Ya suddenly turned her head to look at the man sitting in the middle. I saw Guangling holding a package in his hand and looking at him with interest, and the aroma of braised meat came from the package in his hand. Guangling saw the little girl looking straight at him. He put the packet of braised food under his nose, smelled it, and said, "This braised food is really fragrant. No wonder you stood there and stared at it for so long." As he said that, he waved the bag in front of Xin Ya. "Want to eat?" Xin Ya bit her lip and stared at Guangling and the braised food in his hand, but said nothing. Guangling continued to persuade, "If you want to eat, just sit here." The little girl hesitated for a moment, then slowly moved her little butt towards his side. The man reached out and pinched her cheek, making her look at him, but this time he didn't dare to use force, for fear that it would hurt her and make her red. Guangling looked into her eyes and asked, "Are you angry with me?" The little girl looked at him, but still didn't speak. "Say," Guangling said something slightly louder. Xin Ya felt a little aggrieved and said with wet eyes, "I don't want to talk to you." The man panicked a little when he saw her looking like she wanted to cry. Letting go of her cheek, Guangling put the package of braised food into her hand softly and asked, "I bought braised food for you to eat, can you not be angry?" Xin Ya lowered her head, opened the package of braised meat, reached in and took out a duck chin and put it in her mouth. She said, "While eating, I will still gamble when I am angry. At most I can just talk to you. At most, I just want to talk to you. This sounds like a favor." The man laughed angrily at her words. After thinking about it, forget it. After all, he did set a trap for her in the private room of the restaurant, so he should just accommodate her a little. Otherwise, if you bully this little thing so hard, what if she runs away? Seeing that she was eating with gusto, the man asked, "Is it delicious?" The little girl sucked her fingers and nodded, "It's delicious." Guangling looked at her greedy little look, with the corners of her mouth slightly raised, feeling inexplicably happy. Xin Ya started to feel a little sleepy after finishing the braised food. She was satisfied. At this time, the carriage shook, the little girl's little head unconsciously rested on the shoulder of the man next to her. Guangling turned sideways and directly picked her up, placed her across his lap, and let her head rest on his chest. He looked down at her sleeping face and couldn't help but reach out and touch her lips. The soft touch made him put it down. "Don't know what it's like to kiss." Guangling's eyes flickered on her lips. Just when he lowered his head and wanted to take action, a wolf howl suddenly came from outside. Then, the carriage suddenly stopped. The little girl lying in the man's arms was awakened by the inertia of the carriage suddenly stopping. Xin Ya didn't realize that she was lying in Guangling's arms. She rubbed her sleepy eyes and asked confusedly, "What happened?" At this time, I heard the driver driving the car outside saying in a trembling voice, "Wolf, there are more than a dozen wolves not far ahead of us." "Wolf? Why are there wolves?" Xin Ya was still confused. She thought she was still in the big city of Aqua Blue Star, forgetting that she was now in Douluo Continent. At this time, Guangling's voice came from above her head, "It's normal to have wolves in the wilderness here." Xin Ya raised her head and looked at him. Suddenly she was startled and realized that the posture of the two of them seemed wrong now. She roared in her heart, "Oh my God! How could I fall asleep in his arms? What's going on?" The little girl was stunned for a moment. Guangling looked down at her dazed look, smiled, and said, "You stay in the carriage, I'll go out and take a look." After saying this, he put the little girl on the seat next to him, then stood up and walked out of the car. Outside the carriage, not far away, there were a dozen wolves staring eagerly at the carriage. The driver pulled the horse rope nervously and looked at the wolf. Guangling walked out of the carriage and jumped to the ground. At this moment, the dozen wolves not far away suddenly rushed toward him. Court death. Guangling activated her soul power and waved her hand, shooting countless ice blades at the wolves. In an instant, none of the dozen wolves were spared, and all of them were pierced by ice blades. The horse pulling the cart was frightened and took several steps back. The driver quickly pulled the horse's rope. Suddenly, Guangling was keenly aware of strange movements in the surrounding woods. While looking at the woods, he shouted toward the carriage, "Xin Ya, come out quickly." Xin Ya, who was sitting in the carriage, heard Guangling calling her, and she immediately got out of the carriage. "What's wrong?" Guangling noticed something dormant in the surrounding woods. He turned around and walked quickly to the carriage and hugged Xin Ya down. At this moment, 3 very tall black figures jumped out of the woods and rushed towards the carriage quickly. Guangling instantly stretched out her ice wings, hugged Xin Ya and flew up. The moment the two of them flew up, the carriage crashed into pieces with a boom from the 3 black figures that rushed over. Then a scream of ah and the neighing of a horse came from below the two of them, the little girl held. In Guangling's arms looked down and saw the driver's head being bitten off by one of the black figures. At this time, the three black figures were standing next to the smashed carriage, constantly howling at the two people flying in the air. Only then did Xin Ya clearly see the appearance of the three black figures. They have gray hair on their bodies and are estimated to be 2 meters tall. Their lips are protruding outwards, revealing 2 large canine teeth. Xin Ya frowned and said, "It's actually a wolf thief." Yes, a combination of the wind demon wolf and a human, a group of half-human, half-wolf monsters. Guangling stared at the wolf thieves with dangerously narrowed eyes. The little girl looked at him and asked, "Is there a group?" Guangling nodded and looked at the surrounding woods. Wolves are all social soul beasts, so there can't be only the 3 at the bottom. The others must be dormant in the woods. He knew that these half-human, half-wolf monsters were particularly bloodthirsty and lustful, and liked to prey on human women for mating. Guangling looked down at the little girl in his arms. He guessed that the wolf thieves smelled her, a human woman, and that's why they suddenly attacked their carriage. When she thought that those wolf thieves were here to catch his little thing, Guangling felt angry instantly, and her hands holding Xin Ya couldn't help but tighten. At this time, Xin Ya suddenly remembered something and said excitedly, "Wolf King, that Wolf King has been cultivating for 10,000 years." Although she thought those half-human, half-wolf monsters were scary, when she remembered that the Wolf King had a soul bone, she was no longer afraid, and the little girl began to secretly think about the soul bone of the Wolf King.